She died on the delivery table. 32 years old, 3 babies pulled from her body, 2 girls, 1 boy, all breathing, all screaming. Their mother was not. Her husband stood in the hallway. He was not praying. He was texting his mistress. Within 4 days, the girlfriend changed the sheets on the dead woman's bed. Within 2 weeks, she moved into the house. She posted the dead woman's baby shoes on social media with a caption that read, "Sometimes, life gives you a second chance at family." She thought she had won, but the dead woman was smarter than all of them. She had hidden something in the nursery closet, behind the baby blankets, a sealed envelope, a USB drive, and a letter that began with 6 words. "Mom, if you are reading this." And when the court-ordered DNA test came back, it did not just destroy the husband. It revealed a secret so shocking that the mistress, the mother-in-law, the lawyers, and every single person in that courtroom realized they had underestimated a dead woman. This is the story of a mother who saved her children from beyond the grave, and it will change the way you think about love, betrayal, and the quiet power of a woman who refuses to be silenced. Stay until the end, because the final letter she wrote will break your heart and rebuild it in the same breath. "We're losing her. Get the crash cart, now." Dr. Nina Prescott's voice cut through the delivery room like a blade, calm, controlled. But her hands were shaking. She had delivered over 2,000 babies in her career. She had never lost a mother, not once. And she was not about to start tonight. The monitors screamed. Every single one. The sound was relentless, high-pitched, mechanical. The kind of sound that buries itself in your memory and never leaves. Nurses moved in a blur of blue scrubs and gloved hands. One pressed gauze against the hemorrhage. Another adjusted the IV drip. A third shouted numbers into the intercom. Colleen Ashford lay on the table. 32 years old, 8 months pregnant with triplets. Her dark hair was soaked with sweat. Her lips had gone pale, almost blue. Her fingers were curled around something small. A photograph. The ultrasound image from her 20-week scan. 3 tiny shapes. She had drawn hearts around each one in purple marker. 3 hearts, 3 babies, 3 reasons she had fought through every complication, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. Her eyes fluttered open, just for a second. She looked at Dr. Prescott. She tried to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper, barely human. "Tell them I wanted them, every single day. I wanted them." Then her eyes closed. The crash cart arrived. Dr. Prescott worked. She compressed. She defibrillated. She injected epinephrine directly into the IV line. She worked for 11 minutes. 11 minutes that felt like 11 hours. 11 minutes while the surgical team delivered 3 babies by emergency cesarean. 2 girls, 1 boy. Margot came first, then Bridget, then Theodore. All 3 were breathing. All 3 were screaming, their tiny lungs filling with air for the very first time. The sound of new life, raw and desperate and beautiful. Their mother was not breathing. Their mother was not screaming. Their mother was gone. Dr. Prescott stepped back from the table. She pulled off her gloves. She stared at the clock on the wall. 9:47 in the evening. She would remember that time for the rest of her life. "Time of death," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. 9:47 p.m. The room went quiet. Not silent. Machines still beeped. Babies still cried. But the humans in that room went quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when something irreversible settles into the air. In the hallway outside the delivery room, Grant Ashford stood with his back against the wall. He was not pacing. He was not praying. He was holding his phone. The screen glowed against his face. He was texting. His thumbs moved quickly, efficiently. Like a man checking items off a list, a nurse came through the double doors. Her face was wet. She had been crying. She looked at Grant. She said his name. He did not look up. She said his name again. He held up one finger, the universal gesture for wait. She said his name a third time. Mr. Ashford, you need to come in, now. He looked up. He locked his phone. He slid it into his pocket. He followed the nurse through the doors. He did not ask what was wrong. He did not run. He walked. The NICU team had already taken the triplets. 3 isolates. 3 tiny bodies wrapped in hospital blankets. Margot in pink, Bridget in yellow, Theodore in blue, chimp. They were stable. Small but stable, fighters. All 3 of them, just like their mother. Grant stood over the isolettes. He looked at the babies, he looked at the nurse. All 3 are healthy? He asked. The nurse nodded. Good, he said. That's good. He did not ask about Colleen, not yet. Not until Dr. Prescott came to him directly, not until she stood in front of him and said the words. Even then, his reaction was measured, controlled. He closed his eyes. He pinched the bridge of his nose. He exhaled slowly, like a man absorbing a business setback, like a man recalculating. Was it the hemorrhage? He asked. Dr. Prescott nodded. We did everything we could. The placental abruption was too severe. The bleeding was uncontrollable. I am so sorry, Grant. He nodded. Once, twice. He ran his hand through his hair. The babies are okay, though, he said. It was not a question. The babies are stable. Okay? Okay. He exhaled again. I need to make some calls. He turned and walked back into the hallway. He pulled out his phone. He made a call. It took him 3 seconds to dial. Not the number of a grief-stricken man scrolling through contacts. The number of a man who had the contact ready, waiting. It's me, he said. She's gone. Come to the hospital, but wait until the morning. I'll text you when. He hung up. He stood in the hallway for a long moment. The fluorescent lights hummed above him. The floor was cold tile. The smell was antiseptic and recycled air. He put his phone away. He straightened his collar. He walked back into the NICU. And for the first time, he looked like a grieving husband. Dorothy Brennan arrived at 11:23 that night. She had driven 4 hours through a rainstorm from her home in Ridgewood. Her daughter's water had broken early, 6 weeks early. Dorothy had thrown a bag in the car and driven without stopping, without eating, without turning on the radio. 4 hours of silence and rain and a prayer that repeated itself over and over in her mind. She walked into the maternity ward expecting to hold her grandchildren. She was 61 years old. Her hair was silver. Her hands were strong. She had raised 2 children and alone after her husband died. She had worked 2 jobs for 15 years. She had survived everything life had thrown at her. She was ready for this. She was ready to be a grandmother. A hospital chaplain was waiting at the nurse's station. Dorothy stopped walking. She looked at the chaplain. She looked at the nurse beside him. She knew, before anyone said a word, she knew. A mother always knows. No, she said, just that. Just one word. The chaplain stepped forward. He spoke gently. He used the words that people use when they have practiced delivering the worst news a human being can receive. Dorothy heard none of them. She heard the blood rushing in her ears. She heard the fluorescent lights buzzing. She heard a baby crying somewhere down the hall. Her grandchild, one of her grandchildren, crying for a mother who would never answer. Dorothy sat down, not in a chair, on the floor, right there in the corridor. She sat on the cold tile floor, and she pressed her hands against her face, and she made a sound that was not a word. not a scream. Something older than language. Something that comes from a place so deep inside a mother that most people never hear it. The sound of a heart breaking in real time. A nurse knelt beside her. Another brought water. The chaplain waited. Grant appeared at the end of the hallway. He walked toward Dorothy. He knelt down. He put his hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Dot," he said. His voice was steady, practiced. "She fought so hard. The babies are healthy. All three of them. She would want us to focus on that." Dorothy looked up at him, through tears, through rage, through a grief so enormous it filled the entire hallway. She looked at her son-in-law, and something inside her shifted, something she could not name, not yet, but it was there, a whisper, a warning. She nodded. She let the nurse help her stand. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She asked to see her grandchildren. The NICU was warm, quiet. The machines beeped softly, rhythmically, like tiny heartbeats. Dorothy stood over Margot's isolette first. The baby was impossibly small, 5 pounds 2 ounces, dark hair already, just a wisp of it, and her nose, Colleen's nose, the same slight upturn at the tip, the same delicate bridge. Dorothy's hands were shaking so badly that the nurse had to help her reach inside the isolette. She touched Margot's hand, just one finger. The baby's fingers curled around hers. Instinct, reflex, but it felt like a message, like Colleen reaching through her daughter to say, "I'm still here. I'm still here, Mom." Dorothy stood there for a long time. She touched each baby, Margot, Bridget, Theodore. She memorized their faces, their tiny breaths, the way Bridget's eyelids fluttered in sleep, the way Theodore's mouth made a small O shape, like he was surprised to be alive. She stayed until the nurses gently suggested she rest. She did not rest. She went to the waiting room and sat in a plastic chair and stared at the wall. At one point, she stood to get water from the fountain. The waiting room overlooked the parking garage. Through the window, in the yellow glow of the garage lights, she saw Grant. He was standing next to his car. He was not alone. A woman stood beside him. Young, dark hair, red lipstick, even at midnight. She was holding his hand. Her head was on his shoulder. He was not pushing her away. He was not crying. Dorothy stood at the window, the paper cup of water crushed slowly in her fist. Water ran over her fingers and dripped onto the floor. She did not feel it. She watched until they separated, until the woman walked to her own car, until Grant straightened his tie and walked back toward the hospital entrance. Dorothy sat back down. She set the crushed cup on the table beside her. She folded her hands in her lap. She did not sleep that night, not 1 minute, but she did start planning. The funeral was held on a Thursday. White lilies lined the aisle of First Presbyterian Church. 300 guests filled the pews. The casket was closed. Dorothy had insisted on that. She could not bear the thought of 300 people looking at her daughter's face, studying it, whispering about how natural she looked, as if death were something that could look natural. The church smelled of flowers and candle wax and the faint cologne of too many people pressed into one space. Sunlight came through the stained glass windows and threw colored shadows across the floor. Red, blue, gold, beautiful, indifferent. The light did not care that Colleen Ashford was dead. Grant stood at the podium. He wore a dark suit, navy, not black. His tie was silver. His hair was combed. His eyes were red. He held a folded piece of paper in his hands. He unfolded it slowly. He looked out at the congregation. "Colleen was the light of my life," he said. His voice broke on the word light. Just slightly. Just enough. 300 people leaned forward. 300 hearts ached for him. She was the most generous, the most loving, the most selfless woman I have ever known, he continued. She gave everything to our family, everything to our children. She carried 3 lives inside her body, and she fought for them until her last breath. That is who Colleen was. A fighter, a mother, my best friend. He paused. He pressed his lips together. He looked down at the paper. When he looked up again, there were tears on his cheeks. I don't know how to do this without her, he said, but I know she would want me to try. For Margot, for Bridget, for Theodore, for our family. He stepped down from the podium. The congregation applauded softly. Some people stood. A standing ovation for grief. Dorothy sat in the front pew. She did not stand. She did not applaud. She sat with her hands folded and her back straight and her eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the altar. She was thinking about the parking garage, about the woman with red lipstick holding her son-in-law's hand 4 hours after her daughter died. Fletch sat beside her, Colleen's older brother, 35 years old, built like a dock worker, hands like catcher's mitts. He had not spoken since he arrived from Portland, not one word. He sat in the pew and he stared at Grant, and the muscles in his jaw worked like he was chewing gravel. I'm not crazy, Dorothy whispered, so quietly that only Fletch could hear. Something is wrong with that man. Your sister called me 6 weeks ago, crying. She hung up before she could tell me why. Fletch said nothing, but his hands tightened into fists on his knees. At the back of the church, a woman signed the guest book. She wrote carefully, Vivian Holloway, close family friend. She wore black, a fitted dress. Tasteful, expensive, her lipstick was red, not muted, not subdued, red. The kind of red that announces itself, the kind of red that says, I am here, and I am not hiding. She sat in the last pew. She did not cry. She watched Grant deliver his eulogy with an expression that was difficult to read. Pride, patience, possession, like a woman watching her investment mature. After the service, guests gathered in the fellowship hall. Casseroles and cold cuts and too many desserts. The food people bring when they don't know what else to bring. Dorothy stood by the window and accepted condolences and hugs and the same words repeated over and over and over. She's in a better place. She's watching over those babies. You'll get through this. Time heals. Time does not heal. Dorothy knew that. Time just gives you more space to carry the wound. Jolene Marsh found her by the coffee table. Colleen's best friend since 7th grade. 34 years old. Freckles, red hair, eyes that had been swollen from crying for 3 days straight. Dot, Jolene said. She grabbed Dorothy's arm. I need to tell you something. Colleen called me about 8 weeks before delivery. She told me something strange. She said if anything happened to her during the birth, I should check the closet in the nursery. Behind the baby blankets. She said it twice. I laughed it off. She didn't laugh. Dorothy looked at Jolene. The noise of the fellowship hall faded. The casseroles, the condolences, the whispered gossip. All of it dropped away. The nursery closet, Dorothy repeated. Jolene nodded. Behind the baby blankets, she was specific. Dorothy filed this information away. She did not react. She did not rush home. She simply nodded and squeezed Jolene's hand and said thank you. She had learned something in her 61 years. When you are being watched, you do not show your cards. And she was being watched. Grant's mother, Laurel Ashford, stood across the room. 67 years old, silver hair styled into a perfect bob. Pearls. Always pearls. She had not spoken to Dorothy once since the hospital. Not once. She had not offered condolences. She had not asked about the babies. She stood with her circle of friends, and she watched Dorothy the way a cat watches a mouse, measuring, calculating. 3 days after the funeral, Dorothy noticed things. Grant did not get up for nighttime feedings. Not once. The nanny did everything. The nanny was a woman named Tessa. 26, Vivian's college roommate. Grant had hired her within 72 hours of Colleen's death. He had not asked Dorothy for input. He had not asked anyone. Within that same 72 hours, Grant had also contacted Colleen's life insurance company. He had canceled Colleen's membership at the country club. He had removed her name from the joint checking account. He had donated her clothes, her shoes, her coats, to Goodwill, without asking Dorothy, without asking Fletch, without keeping a single item for the babies. Dorothy said nothing. She documented everything. Dates, times, details. She wrote them in a small notebook she kept in her purse, the same purse Colleen had bought her for Mother's Day 2 years ago. Leather, brown, with a small monogram on the clasp. D. B. Dorothy Brennan. On the 4th night after the funeral, Dorothy heard something on the baby monitor. She was in the guest room. The monitor was on the nightstand. Static, white noise, then a voice, not the nanny's voice, a different voice, younger, smoother, like honey poured over gravel. Soon this will all be ours, baby. Just a little more patience. Dorothy sat up in bed. She stared at the monitor. The green light pulsed. The voice stopped. Footsteps. A door closing. Then silence. The next morning, Dorothy found a sympathy card on the kitchen counter. It was not with the stacks of other cards. It was separate, placed casually beside the coffee maker, as if it were a grocery list. The front had white lilies. The inside was handwritten. To my love, the hardest part is over. Now we begin. V. Dorothy read it twice. She set it back down, exactly where she found it. She poured her coffee. She took a sip. She walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. The card was not hidden. That was what stopped her cold. They had not even bothered to hide it. That level of arrogance, that level of certainty that no one would notice, that no one would care, that the grieving grandmother was too old and too broken to pay attention. They were wrong. Dorothy took her coffee to the garage. She opened Colleen's car, a white Honda Accord. She did not start it. She just sat in the driver's seat. She adjusted the rearview mirror and saw things her daughter had left behind. Sunglasses in the cup holder, a half-finished bottle of water, a prenatal vitamin stuck to the center console, a hair tie on the gear shift, the faint smell of vanilla lotion. Her daughter had been right here, in this seat, alive, driving to doctor's appointments, driving to the store to buy baby furniture, singing along to songs on the radio, resting her hand on her enormous belly, feeling 3 pairs of tiny feet kicking against her palm. Dorothy gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. She did not cry. She was too angry to cry. Anger was better than grief right now. Anger had direction. Grief just had weight. She sat in that car for 45 minutes. When she got out, her coffee was cold. She poured it down the garage drain. She walked back inside. She smiled at the nanny. She kissed each baby on the forehead. She complimented Grant on the breakfast he had not cooked. And that evening, when the house was quiet and Grant was in his study with the door locked, Dorothy went to the nursery. She knelt before the closet. She moved the stacked baby blankets aside, and she found exactly what Jolene had described: a manila envelope, sealed, taped to the back wall, behind a tower of soft blankets that smelled of baby powder and lavender. Her daughter's handwriting was on the front. 2 words: for Mom. Dorothy held the envelope against her chest. She closed her eyes. She took one breath, then another. She did not open it yet. Not here. Not in this house where the walls had ears and the man down the hall was already texting the woman who signed funeral guest books with red lipstick. She tucked the envelope inside her jacket. She stood up. She rearranged the blankets. She turned off the nursery light. She would open it later, somewhere safe, somewhere Grant Ashford would never think to look. Dorothy drove to the parking lot of the public library on Maple Street. She parked under a streetlight. She locked the doors. She turned off the engine. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, sealed, heavy, the weight of her daughter's last words pressing against the faux leather upholstery. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 5 items. A handwritten letter, 8 pages, front and back, Colleen's handwriting, neat, organized. The handwriting of a former paralegal who had spent years making sure every word was legible, every sentence precise. A USB drive, black, small, taped to an index card that read, "Everything is on here. Dates, recordings, financial records. Give to Emmett a copy of a phone bill, not from the family plan, a separate account. Grant's name on the bill. Hundreds of calls and text messages to one number, over and over, every day, sometimes 20 times a day. Screenshots printed on photo paper. Text messages between Grant and Vivian, dating back 2 years. Affectionate messages, planning messages, messages about the future, their future, not the future that included Colleen, and a handwritten note on a small piece of lined paper, folded once. Mom, if you're reading this, I was right. Don't let him take my babies. The drive has everything. Dorothy read the note 3 times. She set it on her lap. She picked up the letter. She read it under the yellow glow of the streetlight. Colleen's voice was everywhere, in every sentence, in every carefully chosen word. Not the voice of a paranoid woman, not the voice of a hormonal, pregnant woman. The voice of a woman who had spent months assembling the truth. The letter began simply, "Mom, I know how this looks, a pregnant woman being paranoid. That is what Grant says. That is what his mother says. But I am not paranoid. I found the texts. I saw the photos. He has been with her for 2 years. The whole time we were trying for these babies. The whole time I was in fertility clinics, getting shots, getting hopes up, and watching them crash. He was with her." Dorothy's hands shook. She pressed the paper flat against the steering wheel and kept reading. "I found a hotel receipt 5 months into the pregnancy. It was in his coat pocket. A room at the Winslow Hotel downtown, charged to his personal card. The receipt showed rose petals and champagne, 2 glasses. I was home eating saltines because the morning sickness was so bad I could barely stand. And he was drinking champagne in a hotel room with another woman. I confronted him. He denied it. He said I was hormonal, that the pregnancy was making me irrational. He said I should talk to someone. He meant a therapist. He wanted me to believe I was the problem." The letter continued, page after page. Colleen described finding more evidence. A second phone hidden in Grant's gym bag. Credit card statements showing dinners and jewelry purchases she never received. A woman's earring in his car that did not belong to Colleen. She described hiring a private investigator, paying with cash from her own savings account. The investigator confirmed the affair. Photographs, hotel records, restaurant receipts. The woman was Vivian Holloway, 29 years old, a real estate agent. She had been seeing Grant for at least 2 years, possibly 3. But the part of the letter that made Dorothy stop breathing was near the end. "Mom, I am not writing this because I think I am going to die. I am writing this because Grant has been asking about my life insurance policy 3 times in 2 weeks. He asked how much it was worth. He asked when it would pay out. He asked if there were any exclusions for complications during childbirth. And last Thursday, he asked Dr. Prescott if complications during triplet deliveries were common. He asked it like he was asking about the weather. like he was checking a box. Dorothy set the letter down. She stared through the windshield at the dark library building. Her breath fogged the glass. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples. She picked the letter up again. I changed my will. I did it 3 weeks ago. Emmett helped me. If something happens to me, the house goes to you. The savings account goes into a trust for the babies. Grant gets nothing. I know that sounds harsh. But a man who asks about his pregnant wife's life insurance policy 3 times in 2 weeks does not deserve her money. He does not deserve her children. He does not deserve her memory. I hope you never read this letter. I hope I am being paranoid. I hope I come home with 3 healthy babies and burn this envelope and laugh about it someday. But if I don't, if the worst happens, then you have everything you need. Fight for them, Mom, like you fought for me and Fletch after Dad died. Like you always fight. You are the strongest person I know. You are the only person I trust. I love you. Now go be their grandmother. Your collie. Dorothy folded the letter along its creases. She pressed it against her chest. She closed her eyes. The parking lot was empty. The street light hummed. Somewhere far away, a train horn sounded. Low and long and mournful. She did not cry. She was beyond crying now. She was in a place past tears, a place where grief transforms into something harder, something with edges, something with purpose. She looked at the envelope, at the USB drive, at the phone bill, at the screenshots. Her daughter had been a paralegal for 6 years before she married Grant. She knew how to build a case. She knew how to organize evidence. She knew that in any fight, documentation was the difference between winning and losing. The envelope was color-coded, tabs along the side, a small table of contents written on a sticky note. Blue tab for financial records, red tab for text messages, green tab for the private investigator's report, yellow tab for the will. Even in crisis, even terrified, even carrying 3 babies inside her body while her husband lied to her face every single day. Colleen had been thorough, precise, methodical. She had been preparing for war. Dorothy started the car. She drove to Emmett Calloway's house. It was after 10 at night. She did not call ahead. She parked in his driveway and knocked on his door and stood on his porch, holding a manila envelope that contained the last will and testament of her daughter's courage. Emmett opened the door in a cardigan and reading glasses. 45 years old, salt and pepper hair, calm eyes. He had been Colleen's godfather since the day she was born. He had taught her to ride a bike. He had hired her at his law firm for her first paralegal job. He had helped her change her will 3 weeks before she died. He looked at Dorothy. He looked at the envelope. He stepped aside without a word. They sat at his kitchen table until 2 in the morning. Emmett read every page. He plugged in the USB drive. He reviewed the financial records, the phone logs, the photographs from the private investigator, the text messages. One message in particular made Emmett set down his coffee cup and push his reading glasses onto his forehead. Grant to Vivian, dated 4 months before delivery. Once the babies are born and everything settles, we will be free. She will sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. He was planning this, Emmett said quietly. Before she even delivered, he was planning to take everything. Dorothy nodded. She already knew. She had known since the parking garage, since the red lipstick, since the sympathy card on the kitchen counter. What do we do? She asked. Emmett closed the laptop. He looked at Dorothy. His godchild was dead. His colleague was dead. A woman he had watched grow from a gap-toothed little girl into a brave, careful, meticulous woman was dead. And the man who was supposed to protect her was already counting her insurance money. We do exactly what Colleen wanted us to do, he said. We fight. 2 weeks after the funeral, Grant asked Dorothy to leave. He did it over breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and a glass pitcher that Colleen had bought at a farmer's market in Vermont. Dorothy remembered the day they bought it. A Sunday in October, leaves changing, Colleen holding the pitcher up to the sunlight, admiring the way the glass caught the colors. Now Grant poured juice into that pitcher, like it was just a pitcher, like it had no history, like it meant nothing. Dot, he said. His voice was gentle, reasonable, the voice of a man who had practiced being gentle and reasonable. I think it might be best if you head home. The babies need stability, a routine, and I've noticed that your presence has been, well, a bit disruptive. Dorothy set down her fork. She looked at him. Disruptive, she repeated. Tessa says you hover over the babies at night. You come into the nursery at odd hours. It's confusing the schedule. I'm just thinking about what's best for them. What is best for them is their grandmother, Dorothy said. Grant's smile tightened, just a fraction. Most people would not have noticed, Dorothy noticed. I appreciate everything you've done, he said. But this is my home. These are my children, and I need to establish a routine that works for all of us. Dorothy took a sip of coffee. She smiled. Of course, she said. You're right. I'll start packing. She did not mean a word of it. But she needed time. She needed Emmett to file the paperwork. She needed to be strategic. Colleen had taught her that. Or rather, Colleen's letter had taught her that. Don't react. Document. Build your case. Then strike. She left that afternoon. She moved into a hotel 3 miles away, close enough to drive back in minutes, far enough to give Grant the illusion of victory. Within days, Vivian moved in, not into the main house, into the guest house on the property, a small cottage behind the garden that Colleen had used as a home office, where she had organized her files, where she had printed those screenshots, where she had written that letter. Vivian transformed it. New curtains, new bedding, a vase of fresh flowers on the desk where Colleen's laptop had been. She told the nanny she was helping Grant through a difficult time. She told the neighbors she was a close family friend providing support. She told everyone who would listen that those babies needed a mother figure. She did not mention that she had been sleeping with their father for 3 years. The changes came fast, relentless, calculated. Within 3 weeks of Colleen's death, Vivian had taken over the nanny's schedule. She had redecorated the living room. She had removed Colleen's photographs from the hallway and the mantel and the side tables. She replaced them with neutral art, geometric prints, abstract shapes, nothing personal, nothing warm, nothing that said a family had lived here. Jolene called Dorothy one evening. Her voice was tight, controlled, but barely. Dot, you need to see this. Check Vivian's social media, her latest post. Dorothy opened her phone. She found the account, public. Of course it was public. Vivian wanted people to see. The post showed a pair of baby shoes, white, tiny, hand-stitched with small yellow daisies. Dorothy recognized them immediately. Her stomach dropped. Those were Colleen's shoes. Jolene had been with Colleen when she bought them. 8 months pregnant, waddling through a boutique on Highland Avenue. Colleen had held them up and said, "These are the ones. These are perfect." She had bought 3 pairs, one for each baby, and now Vivian had photographed them, arranged them on a white marble countertop, with a caption, "Sometimes life gives you a second chance at family." Dorothy closed her phone. She sat on the hotel bed. She pressed her hands flat against her knees. She breathed, in, out, like a woman counting down to detonation. The next morning, Emmett called with worse news. He had spoken to the life insurance company. Grant had already filed the claim. $750,000. The policy had been increased 6 months ago, from $200,000 to $750,000. The increase required Colleen's signature. The signature doesn't match, Emmett said. I've had a handwriting analyst compare it. It's not Colleen's. Forged, Dorothy said. Almost certainly. Dorothy closed her eyes. Her daughter's life, reduced to a number on a policy, a forged signature, a payout that would fund Grant's new life, with the woman who posted baby shoes on social media. There's more, Emmett said. My forensic accountant has been reviewing the financial records from the USB drive. Grant opened a separate LLC 18 months ago. He transferred $320,000 from the joint account into this LLC over the course of a year. Small increments, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Never enough to trigger an alert. Where did the money go? He bought a condominium, a 2-bedroom unit downtown. The title is in Vivian's name. Dorothy said nothing. He also made monthly payments of $4,000 to Vivian, listed as consulting fees, and Dot. Emmett paused. Colleen's inheritance from her father, $85,000. Grant moved it into the LLC 6 months ago, without any documentation showing Colleen's consent. Dorothy opened her eyes. She looked at herself in the hotel mirror, 61 years old, silver hair, lines around her eyes, from years of laughter and years of loss. She looked tired. She was tired. But tired was not the same as beaten. File everything, she said. Whatever we need to file. Whatever court we need to go to. I want custody of those babies. And I want Grant Ashford to answer for every dollar he stole from my daughter. At the Triplets' 1-month pediatrician appointment, Dorothy arrived early. She had arranged the visit through Dr. Chen's office. She had the legal authority as emergency contact. She had all 3 babies in the triple stroller Colleen had ordered before she died. The shipping tag was still on the handle. She was checking in at the reception desk when the office door opened. Vivian walked in, diaper bag on one shoulder, bottles in hand, hair perfect, lipstick red. She walked to the counter and smiled at the receptionist. I'm here for the Ashford triplets, she said. I'm their stepmother. The waiting room went quiet. 4 other mothers looked up from their phones. The receptionist looked at Dorothy, then at Vivian, then back at Dorothy. Dorothy did not raise her voice. She did not make a scene. She simply reached into the stroller and lifted Margot into her arms. The baby settled against her chest, warm, small, alive. I have the appointment, Dorothy said. These are my grandchildren. I am their emergency medical contact, and this woman is not their stepmother. She is not their family. She is not on any of their records. Vivian's smile faltered, just for a second. Then she recovered. Grant sent me, she said. He wanted me to be here. Grant is not here, Dorothy replied. I am. She turned her back to Vivian. She carried Margot to the examination room. The nurse followed with Bridget and Theodore. Vivian stood at the reception desk. Alone, holding bottles that no one needed. After the appointment, Dorothy drove to the cemetery. She parked on the gravel path and walked across the damp grass to Colleen's headstone. It was modest, gray granite, engraved with careful letters. Colleen Marie Ashford, beloved mother, daughter, friend. Dorothy sat on the ground beside the stone. She did not care about the damp grass soaking through her pants. She arranged the flowers someone had left. Lilies. Again, always lilies. She picked a small weed growing near the base of the headstone. She brushed dirt from the engraved letters with her thumb. She thought about the inscription, mother, daughter, friend. 3 words, true words, but incomplete. They left out warrior. That was what her daughter had been, a warrior who built a fortress out of manila envelopes and USB drives and carefully dated photographs, a warrior who fought her battles in silence because the man she married had convinced her that speaking up meant she was crazy. Dorothy stayed until the groundskeeper started his evening rounds. She stood. She brushed off her pants. She touched the top of the headstone. "I found the envelope, Collie," she whispered. "I found everything, and I'm not going to stop." She walked back to her car. The sun was setting. Orange and pink and gold. The colors Colleen had loved. The colors she had painted the nursery. A sunset palette for 3 babies who would grow up in its warmth. Dorothy started the engine. She drove back to the hotel. She ordered room service, chicken soup. She ate every bite. She called Emmett and told him to file the petition for grandparent custody in the morning. Then she sat on the edge of the hotel bed and opened her small notebook. She wrote the date. She wrote what had happened at the pediatrician's office. She wrote what Vivian had said, word for word. She wrote the time. She wrote the names of witnesses. She closed the notebook. She placed it on the nightstand beside Colleen's letter. 2 documents side by side, one written by her daughter, one written by herself, both building the same case, both fighting the same fight, both protecting the same 3 tiny lives. Grant's lawyer was named Whitfield, Bradford Whitfield III, a name that sounded like money, a name that had never known a public library parking lot at 10 o'clock at night or a hotel room with a minibar and a broken heart. Whitfield filed a restraining order against Dorothy. The petition claimed she was emotionally unstable, grief-stricken beyond reason, interfering with the father's parental rights and bonding with his newborn children. It described Dorothy as aggressive and irrational and a disruptive influence on the household. Attached to the petition was a sworn statement from Laurel Ashford, Grant's mother. The woman with the pearls and the perfect bob and the eyes that measured everything. Laurel described Dorothy as hysterical, with grief, and incapable of respecting boundaries. She wrote that Dorothy had barged into the pediatrician's office uninvited and created a scene that frightened the babies and embarrassed the family. Emmett read the petition in his office with the door closed. He read it twice. Then he set it down and poured himself a glass of water. "They're trying to isolate you," he told Dorothy on the phone. "Standard tactic. Remove the grandmother. Control the narrative. Make you look unstable, so when the custody question arises, you're already discredited." "What do we do?" Dorothy asked. "We file a counterpetition. Grandparent visitation rights under state statute. But, more importantly, I'm requesting a guardian ad litem for the triplets, an independent attorney appointed by the court to represent the children's interests. Not yours, not Grant's, theirs." On what grounds? On the grounds that Grant introduced an unrelated woman into the household within weeks of his wife's death, that he hired that woman's college roommate as the nanny, that financial records show potential fraud, and that the deceased mother's own documents suggest she feared for her children's welfare. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. She could hear traffic through the hotel window. Horns, engines, the ordinary sounds of a world that was still turning even though hers had stopped. "Do it," she said. Emmett also filed a request for a court-ordered DNA test for all 3 children. He told Dorothy it was standard procedure in custody disputes where parentage was relevant, but there was something in his voice, a note she couldn't quite place, a frequency just beneath the words. "Why the DNA test?" she asked. "Because the affair timeline overlaps with the IVF treatments," Emmett said, "and because in my experience, men who lie about money also lie about other things." The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks, 21 days of waiting, of documenting, of watching from a hotel room while Vivian rearranged her daughter's house. Dorothy used every one of those days. She met with Emmett's forensic accountant, a woman named Patricia, who wore bifocals and spoke in numbers the way poets speak in metaphors. Patricia laid out the financial timeline like a surgeon laying out instruments. The separate LLC, the transferred funds, the condo in Vivian's name, the monthly payments disguised as consulting fees, the forged signature on the insurance increase, the stolen inheritance. He built a paper castle, Patricia said. Impressive from the outside, but the foundation is fraud. Jolene provided her own testimony. She described the phone call from Colleen about the nursery closet. She described the social media post with the baby shoes. She described 3 years of friendship with a woman who slowly, carefully, went from vibrant to hollow, from confident to cautious, from speaking her mind to whispering. She changed, Jolene told Emmett during the deposition. The last 2 years especially. She stopped calling as much. She stopped coming to book club. She made excuses. She was always tired, always busy, always apologizing for Grant. I didn't push. I should have pushed. I should have asked her directly. I didn't. I will live with that for the rest of my life. Fletch flew in from Portland. He moved into the hotel room next to Dorothy's. He brought a suitcase and a toolbox and a look in his eyes that worried everyone who loved him. I'm not going to do anything stupid, he told Dorothy, but I'm not leaving either. Not until this is done. The days before the hearing were heavy, slow, weighted with the kind of tension that sits in your chest and makes your heart beat too fast and too loud. Dorothy spent her mornings at the hotel gym, walking on the treadmill, not running, just walking, steady, forward, one foot after the other, the way you survive anything. In the evenings, she went through Colleen's pregnancy journal. Emmett had retrieved it from the bedside drawer during a supervised visit to collect personal effects. It was a spiral-bound notebook with a lavender cover. Colleen had written in it every week, sometimes every day. The entries started hopeful. Week 8. I heard the heartbeat today. 3 of them. I cried in the car. Grant smiled, but didn't cry. Maybe men don't cry about heartbeats. Week 12. The nausea is brutal, but I don't care. 3 healthy babies growing inside me. I would be sick for 9 months straight if it meant they were safe. Week 16. We picked names today. Grant wanted traditional names. I wanted something with meaning. We compromised. Margot after my grandmother, Bridget after his aunt, Theodore because Colleen loved the name Teddy. Then the entries changed, slowly at first, then unmistakably. Week 20. Grant felt them kick today. He cried. Maybe I was wrong about everything. Week 22. He didn't come to the ultrasound. His phone rang and he left. I heard him say baby to whoever was on the other end. He calls me Colleen. He calls her baby. Week 24. I found the earring in his car, under the passenger seat. Small. Gold. Not mine. I don't wear gold. Week 26. Came home smelling like perfume again. Not mine. Not the kind you buy at the department store. The kind you buy for someone specific. Someone you know. Someone you study. Week 28. I hired the investigator. I used cash. He doesn't know. Week 30. The investigator confirmed it. Her name is Vivian Holloway. She's 29. She's a real estate agent. She's been with my husband for at least 2 years. Possibly since before we started IVF. Possibly since the very beginning. Dorothy closed the journal. She pressed her hand flat against the lavender cover. She could feel the indentation of Colleen's pen strokes through the paper, the physical pressure of her daughter's hand. Writing these words, processing this betrayal, alone, in the dark. While 3 babies grew inside her and her husband texted another woman goodnight, she read one more entry. Week 32, the last entry, written 6 days before delivery. I'm not staying because I'm weak. I'm staying because I have 3 children growing inside me and nowhere to go that he won't follow. But I'm getting ready. Every day I'm getting ready. Mom doesn't know yet. Nobody knows yet, but they will. When the time is right, they will. She was decorating their nursery with one hand and documenting her escape with the other, building cribs and building a legal case in the same breath, picking out baby blankets and hiding manila envelopes behind them. A woman at war on 2 fronts. And nobody knew, because she fought her war in silence, because Grant had convinced her that speaking up meant she was losing her mind. Dorothy closed the journal. She placed it beside the letter, beside the notebook. 3 documents now. 3 women's histories stacked on a hotel nightstand. She turned off the lamp. She lay in the dark and listened to the hotel heating system hum. She thought about her daughter, about the woman Colleen had been before Grant. Loud, funny. The kind of person who talked to strangers in grocery store lines, who remembered everyone's birthday, who danced in the kitchen while cooking dinner. That woman had been methodically erased, replaced by someone quieter, someone careful, someone who documented everything because she no longer trusted anyone to believe her. Dorothy pulled the blanket to her chin. She stared at the ceiling. "You were right, Collie," she whispered. "You were right about all of it, and I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to tell me." The ceiling did not answer. The heater hummed. The hotel was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, someone was watching television. The low murmur of a news anchor, a commercial, laughter. Dorothy did not sleep, but she rested. She would need her strength for what came next. The courtroom was smaller than Dorothy expected. Room 412. Family court, 3rd floor. The hallway smelled of floor polish and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The kind of lights that make everyone look tired, even the people who slept well. Dorothy did not sleep well. She wore a navy dress, simple. Colleen had picked it out for her 2 Christmases ago. She wore the brown leather purse with the monogram. DB inside the purse was Colleen's letter, folded along its creases, always with her now. Grant arrived with Whitfield. Dark suit, dark tie, hair perfect. He looked like a man who had slept 8 hours. He looked like a man who had no worries. He nodded at Dorothy across the aisle. Polite, controlled, the nod of a man performing decency for an audience. Laurel sat behind Grant. Pearls. Perfect bob. She did not nod at Dorothy. She did not look at Dorothy. She looked straight ahead at the judge's bench like she was waiting for a performance to begin. Whitfield spoke first. He painted a picture of a devoted father, a grieving husband, a man who had lost the love of his life and was now trying to raise 3 newborns alone. He described Dorothy as well-meaning but overbearing. He said the word overbearing 4 times. He said the word boundaries 6 times. He suggested that Dorothy's grief had made her unable to distinguish between love and control. He was good. Dorothy had to admit that. He was very good. He spoke with the kind of measured confidence that cost $500 an hour. Then Laurel took the stand. She described Dorothy as a woman who never approved of Grant and tried to control Colleen's choices throughout the marriage. She said Dorothy showed up at the hospital uninvited and refused to leave despite being asked repeatedly. She said Dorothy's behavior at the pediatrician's office was embarrassing and inappropriate. Every word was technically true. Every word was completely misleading. That was the genius of it. That was what money bought, not lies, distortion. The careful bending of truth until it pointed in the wrong direction. Emmett waited. He let them finish. He let every word settle into the courtroom air. Then he stood. "Your Honor," he said, I have evidence that Mr. Ashford's characterization of the situation is not merely incomplete. It is deliberately misleading. He presented the financial records, the LLC, the transferred funds, the condo in Vivian's name, the forged insurance signature, the monthly payments, the stolen inheritance. Whitfield objected. Repeatedly, the judge overruled. Repeatedly. Emmett presented the text messages from the USB drive. He read 3 of them into the record. The one about being free once the babies were born, the one about Colleen signing whatever he put in front of her, and one more. A text from Vivian to Grant, dated 2 days after the funeral. When do I get to stop being the secret? I've waited long enough. The courtroom shifted. The energy changed. 300 invisible threads pulled tight between every person in that room. Then the judge asked Dorothy to respond to Grant's characterization. Dorothy stood. She looked at the judge. She looked at Grant. She looked at Laurel. She opened her mouth to speak, and her voice cracked on the first word. She stopped. She breathed. She started again. Your Honor, my daughter is dead. She left behind 3 babies who will never know her voice. They will never feel her hold them. They will never hear her sing the lullaby I sang to her. She paused. The courtroom was silent. Not a single throat cleared. Not a single paper rustled. The man who was supposed to protect her moved his girlfriend into their home before the funeral flowers wilted. He forged her signature to steal her life insurance. He took her inheritance. He erased her photographs from her own walls. And he is standing here today calling me overbearing. Her voice was steady now, low, clear. The voice of a woman who had stopped shaking. I am not here because I am overbearing. I am not here because I cannot let go. I am here because my daughter asked me to be. She left me a letter. She left me evidence. She left me a promise to keep, and I intend to keep it. The judge looked at Dorothy for a long moment. She looked at Grant. She looked at the evidence binders Emmett had submitted. She ordered the DNA test. She granted temporary, supervised visitation for Dorothy pending the full hearing. She denied the restraining order. Grant's jaw tightened, one muscle, barely visible, but Dorothy saw it. She saw it, and she did not look away. Outside the courthouse, Fletch was pacing. He had not been allowed inside. Character witnesses were sequestered. He was vibrating with the kind of energy that precedes either greatness or disaster. Grant walked out the side entrance. Fletch saw him. He moved before Dorothy could stop him. You killed my sister, Fletch said. He did not shout. His voice was low, controlled. The kind of controlled that is more frightening than any scream. Maybe not with your hands, but you broke her heart so completely that her body couldn't hold on. You stole her money. You stole her peace. You stole her trust. And now you're trying to steal her children. Grant stopped. He looked at Fletch. He adjusted his cuffs, straightened his collar, the gestures of a man who believes he is above confrontation. Your sister was sick, Fletcher, he said, calm, almost gentle, almost convincing, mentally. The pregnancy made it worse. Everything I did was to protect my family. I'm sorry you can't see that. Fletch's hands trembled. Dorothy grabbed his arm. She squeezed, hard. A mother's grip. The kind that says, not here, and not now, and I need you to hold on just a little longer. Fletch stepped back. He let out a breath. He looked at Grant one more time. Colleen saw you, he said. She saw through every lie, every excuse, every smile. She saw what you were, and she made sure the whole world would see it too. Grant said nothing. He walked to his car. He opened the door. He sat behind the wheel. He did not start the engine for a long time. That night, Dorothy was alone in her hotel room. She sat on the bathroom floor, not by choice. Her legs simply gave out. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold tile and held Colleen's letter against her chest. I don't know if I can do this, Collie, she whispered. I'm 61 years old. I'm fighting a man with money and lawyers and a mother who lies under oath. I don't know if I'm strong enough. The bathroom was small, white tile, a single overhead light, the kind of light that hides nothing. Dorothy saw her reflection in the mirror across from where she sat. She saw herself, but she also saw something else, her eyes. The same eyes Colleen had, the same shade of green, the same slight upturn at the corners. Her daughter's eyes, looking back at her, from inside her own face. Dorothy pressed her palm against the tile floor. She pushed herself up. She stood. She looked at her reflection straight on. She ran water over her face. She dried it with a hotel towel. She walked to the nightstand and picked up the phone. She called the front desk. She asked for extra towels. She did not need extra towels. She needed to hear another human voice. Because the silence in that room sounded too much like the silence after the doctor said, "I'm sorry." We did everything we could. The front desk clerk was young, cheerful. He said he would send the towels right up. He asked if she needed anything else. She said no. Thank you. Good night. She hung up. She sat on the bed. She opened her notebook. She wrote the date. She wrote what happened at the hearing. She wrote what the judge said. She wrote what Grant said. She wrote what Fletch said. Then she put on her coat and drove to a 24-hour diner on Route 9. She parked in front and walked in. The diner was warm. Right. Smelled like coffee and bacon and the fryer that never stopped. A waitress with tired eyes and a kind smile asked her what she wanted. Apple pie, Dorothy said. And coffee. Black. She sat in a booth by the window. She watched the waitress refill cups for truckers and night shift nurses, and a young couple sharing pancakes at 2 in the morning. She ate the pie, every bite. Apple, cinnamon, buttery crust, Colleen's favorite. They used to split a slice every Sunday after church. Dorothy left a $40 tip on a $6 check. She drove back to the hotel with the windows down. The cold air bit her face. Her eyes watered. She did not turn up the heat. She let the cold wake her up. Let it remind her that she was still alive, still fighting, still here. 6 weeks had passed since the first hearing. The DNA results were due any day. Emmett had prepared Dorothy for every possibility. He had explained the science, the timeline, the process. He had told her to be patient. Dorothy was not patient. She was many things: stubborn, determined, exhausted, heartbroken. But patient was not one of them. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Dorothy was in her hotel room, folding the laundry she had washed in the hotel's guest machines. Small clothes, baby clothes. She had been buying outfits for the triplets during her supervised visits. She folded each tiny piece with care. 3 onesies, 3 socks, 3 hats, everything in threes. Her whole life was in threes now. Her phone rang. Emmett's name on the screen. "Dorothy," he said, "I need you to sit down." She sat on the edge of the bed. A small sock fell from her lap to the floor, white, with a yellow duck on the toe. The DNA results came back, Emmett said. Dorothy waited. She could hear Emmett breathing. She could hear the clock ticking on his desk. She could hear everything and nothing at the same time. "The triplets," Emmett said. He paused. He cleared his throat. "Margot, Bridget, and Theodore. None of them are Grant's biological children." The room tilted. Not physically, but something inside Dorothy shifted. Like the floor had moved an inch to the left. Like the walls had expanded. Like the air had changed temperature. "What did you say?" she asked. "I said none of them are his. Not one, not two, all 3. The court-ordered paternity test is conclusive." Grant Ashford is not the biological father of any of those children. Dorothy pressed her free hand against the mattress. She felt the bedspread, the texture, cotton, hotel cotton, real, solid. She was still here, still in this room, still in this life, the life that kept pulling the ground from under her feet. How is that possible? She whispered. Emmett explained, slowly, carefully. The way you explain something that changes everything. Colleen and Grant had been doing IVF treatments for 3 years. The embryos were created at Whitfield Fertility Clinic. Grant was told his sperm count was low but viable. The clinic attempted 3 rounds of implantation. All 3 times, Grant's samples were flagged as non-viable. The clinic recommended donor material as a standard backup procedure. Colleen signed the consent form. Alone, she authorized the use of anonymous donor sperm. Grant did not sign. Grant was not told. The clinic records showed only Colleen's signature on the donor consent form. She knew, Dorothy said. Not a question. She knew, Emmett confirmed. The clinic informed her, after the second round, that Grant's samples could not produce viable embryos. They recommended a donor. She agreed. She did not tell Grant. Dorothy was quiet for a long time. She looked at the baby sock on the floor, the yellow duck, smiling, oblivious. Why, Dorothy asked. Why didn't she tell him? I found a journal entry, Emmett said. From around that time. Colleen wrote it. He read it to her. The doctor told me Grant's samples won't work. They recommended a donor. I said yes. I didn't tell Grant because he would have refused. He would have said his pride matters more than our family, and I want these babies more than I want his approval. For the first time in my marriage, I made a choice that was mine, just mine. Dorothy let the words settle. She let them find their place inside the landscape of everything she now knew about her daughter's life, her daughter's marriage, her daughter's courage. Colleen did not have an affair. She made a medical decision, alone, in secret, because the man she married was too proud to accept help, too vain to admit his own body had failed, too selfish to put their family above his ego, and that same man was now fighting for custody of 3 children who were not biologically his, fighting for control of a life insurance policy that was never rightfully his, fighting to erase a woman who had built her family without him. What happens now? Dorothy asked. Grant's legal position for sole custody is critically weakened. A man with no biological connection to the children, a documented pattern of financial fraud, and evidence of an extramarital affair has very little standing against a biological grandmother. And Vivian? That, Emmett said, is where it gets interesting. When Vivian heard the DNA results, her first reaction was exactly what Grant's lawyers feared. She was the one lying, Vivian said, to Grant, to his mother, to anyone who would listen. She was the one cheating. The babies aren't even his. For 48 hours, Vivian believed this was her victory. Proof that Colleen was the unfaithful one. Proof that Grant had been the victim all along. She told the story to her friends, to her parents. She nearly posted about it online. Then Emmett's office released the clinic records, the donor consent form, the medical documentation showing Grant's non-viable samples, the timeline proving that Colleen had not had an affair. She had made a reproductive choice within the context of a legitimate medical procedure. The narrative flipped, overnight, completely. Colleen had not betrayed Grant. Colleen had built a family in spite of Grant. She had carried 3 children for 8 months. She had endured a high-risk pregnancy. She had organized their nursery and painted their name plaques and drawn hearts on their ultrasound photos. And she had done all of it, knowing that the man sleeping beside her every night was sleeping with someone else. Grant was not destroyed by guilt. He was destroyed by humiliation. His manhood, his legacy, his name, none of it lived in those 3 babies. His mother called him that evening. Laurel's voice on the phone was ice. "Those children are someone else's problem now," she said. "Do not drag this family's name any further through the mud." She hung up. She did not call back. The irony was not lost on anyone. Grant had spent 3 years cheating on the only woman who was actually building their family. He had lied, he had stolen, he had forged, and the whole time Colleen was the one doing the work. The real work. The painful work. The shots and the appointments and the hope and the heartbreak. She did it alone. She did it in silence. And she did it knowing that her husband's contributions to their family had stopped at the bedroom door. Dr. Nina Prescott called Dorothy that evening. Her voice was quiet, careful, the voice of a woman who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. "Mrs. Brennan," she said, "I need to tell you something. Your daughter spoke to me the week before delivery. She said something I haven't been able to forget." Dorothy waited. She said, "If something goes wrong, make sure my mother gets the babies, not Grant, my mother." I told her nothing would go wrong. I was wrong about that. But I remember what she asked, and I want you to know that I will say the same thing under oath if you need me to. Dorothy closed her eyes. She pressed the phone against her ear. She heard her daughter's voice, not the doctor's voice, Colleen's voice, clear and certain and brave, not Grant. My mother. Dorothy thanked Dr. Prescott. She hung up. She sat in the hotel room in the falling dark. She did not turn on the light. She did not need to. She could see perfectly well. She could see everything now. Grant went to the press, a local television reporter, Channel 7, a woman with helmet hair and a sympathetic nod who specialized in human interest stories. Grant sat across from her in his living room, the living room that no longer had Colleen's photographs. He wore a button-down shirt, open collar, no tie. The look of a man inviting you in, the look of a man with nothing to hide. "I loved my wife," he said. The camera zoomed in on his eyes. They were wet, perfectly wet. The amount of moisture that suggests deep emotion without actual tears streaming down. "I thought we built a family together. I thought those children were mine. Finding out the truth has been the most devastating experience of my life." The reporter asked about the affair. Grant deflected with practiced ease. "I made mistakes," he said. "I won't deny that. But I never stopped loving Colleen, and I never stopped believing I was those babies' father. That was taken from me, without my knowledge, without my consent." The segment aired on the 6 o'clock news, then the 10 o'clock news, then it went online. Within 48 hours, the comment section split in two. Half the people felt sorry for Grant. The other half did not. Grant had miscalculated. He had always been good at controlling small rooms, courtrooms, operating rooms, dinner tables. But the internet is not a small room. The internet is everyone, everywhere, all at once. And the internet had questions. If he loved his wife so much, why did his girlfriend move in 2 weeks after the funeral? If he didn't know about the donor sperm, why was he already filing for life insurance? Why did he forge his dead wife's signature? Emmett waited 3 days. He let the story circulate. He let the comments accumulate. Then, with Dorothy's permission, he released a carefully curated selection of evidence. The forged life insurance signature, the forensic handwriting analysis showing it was not Colleen's hand. The financial transfers, $320,000 siphoned from the joint account into an LLC that purchased a condo in Vivian's name. The timeline, showing the affair, began before the IVF treatments, before the pregnancy, before any of it. Grant had been with Vivian from the very beginning. and one text message entered into court record, available to any reporter who requested the public filing. Grant to Vivian, 4 months before Colleen's death. Once the babies are born and everything settles, we will be free. She will sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. Public opinion reversed, not gradually, not thoughtfully. It reversed the way a wave crashes. Complete, sudden, drenching. Women shared the story on social media with captions that were part rage and part recognition. Comments from women who had been there, who had found the texts, who had discovered the second phone, who had been told they were paranoid, who had been told they were hormonal, who had been told they were crazy. Colleen became a symbol, not a victim, a symbol. The woman who protected her children from beyond the grave. The woman who built a legal case while building a nursery. The woman who fought her war in silence and won it after she was gone. Then Vivian called Emmett. It was a Thursday evening. Emmett was at his desk. His phone rang from an unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail. He answered on the last ring. "Mr. Calloway," the voice said. "This is Vivian Holloway. I need to talk to you, and I think you need to hear what I have to say." She came to his office the next morning. She wore no lipstick. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were swollen. She looked like a woman who had not slept in a week. She looked like a woman who had finally stopped performing. She told Emmett everything. Grant had been texting another woman. Not Colleen, not Vivian, a third woman. A pharmaceutical representative named Danielle. The texts were dated just 2 weeks after Colleen's death, while Vivian was moving into the guest house, while Vivian was rearranging furniture and posting baby shoes and believing she had won. "I found the texts on his phone," Vivian said. "The same way Colleen found mine. History repeating itself, except I'm not pregnant, and I'm not dead." She provided Emmett with recordings. Conversations she had recorded on her own phone over the past 2 weeks. Grant discussing how to handle Dorothy in the custody case. Grant telling Vivian to lie about how long they had been together. Grant explaining that he needed a woman in the picture for the custody hearing because single fathers don't get sympathy. She provided one more piece of information, something that made Emmett set his pen down and lean back in his chair. "He told me to be the mother those kids need," Vivian said. "Not because he loves them, not because he wants to be a father, because he needs me in the frame, for the image, for the case, the same way he needed Colleen, as a prop, as a backdrop, as a woman who made him look like the man he wanted people to see." Emmett looked at her for a long time. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Vivian's eyes filled. She looked at the desk, at her hands, at the ring Grant had bought her at the jewelry store the private investigator had photographed. "I'm not a good person in this story," she said. "I know that. Osha Butts. I knew he was married. I told myself she didn't appreciate him. That's what liars tell themselves. But I didn't know about the insurance. I didn't know about the forged signature. I didn't know he was stealing from her while she was pregnant with children he convinced me were his." She pulled the ring off her finger. She set it on the desk. "I thought he loved me. I was wrong about that too." Emmett picked up the ring. He turned it over. He set it back down. "Would you testify?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Under oath, in court, on camera, whatever you need." Dorothy learned about Vivian's defection from Emmett that afternoon. She sat in her hotel room and listened. She said nothing for a long time. "I don't forgive her," Dorothy finally said. "I want to be clear about that. She slept with my daughter's husband. She moved into my daughter's home. She photographed my daughter's baby shoes. I don't forgive that." "Understood," Emmett said. "But if she can help protect those babies," Dorothy continued, "then I will accept her testimony." Colleen would have accepted it too. Colleen was practical. She would have used every weapon available. That weekend, Dorothy took the triplets to the park. It was the first time she had taken them outside the house during her supervised visits. The triple stroller that Colleen had ordered arrived 6 days after the funeral. The shipping tag was still on the handle. Dorothy had never removed it. She left it there. A small paper tag with Colleen's name and address. A receipt from a purchase made by a woman who expected to push this stroller herself. She walked for 2 hours, through the park, past the playground, around the pond, past the bench where she and Colleen used to sit and feed the ducks when Colleen was small. She did not think about court. She did not think about Grant. She did not think about DNA or fraud or forged signatures. Too young to laugh, the book said. But, too young to laugh, the book said. But Dorothy heard it, a small, bright, startled sound, like joy catching itself by surprise. She walked for 2 hours. She did not check her phone once. The final hearing was held on a Monday. Room 412 again. Same fluorescent lights, same stale coffee smell, same cold tile floor, but the room felt different. The air was charged, electric, the way air feels before a thunderstorm breaks. Dorothy wore the navy dress again, the one Colleen had picked out. She wore the brown purse with the monogram. DB, inside, folded along its creases, Colleen's letter. She touched it through the leather before she sat down. A ritual now, a talisman. Grant arrived alone. No Whitfield. He had changed lawyers. His new attorney was younger, less expensive, less confident. Laurel was not in the courtroom. She had stopped returning Grant's calls 2 weeks ago, after the news segment, after the public evidence release, after the Ashford family name appeared in headlines beside words like fraud and forgery and affair. Emmett presented the complete case. Methodical, chronological, devastating, the financial fraud, the forged signature, the LLC, the condo, the siphoned inheritance. Each document entered into evidence with the precision of a surgeon. Emmett had learned from Colleen, or perhaps Colleen had learned from him. Either way, the case was built the way Colleen built everything, color-coded, tabbed, organized, airtight. The DNA results, the clinic records, the donor consent form signed only by Colleen, the medical explanation, the journal entry explaining why she made the choice alone, Vivian's testimony. She took the stand. She spoke clearly. She did not cry. She described the affair, the timeline, the texts about being free, the recordings of Grant planning how to handle Dorothy, the revelation about the third woman. He didn't love me, Vivian said. He didn't love Colleen. He doesn't love those babies. He loves what people think of him. He loves the story. The surgeon with the beautiful wife and the beautiful children and the beautiful house. We were all just characters in his story. And when the story didn't go the way he wanted, he rewrote it. Grant's new lawyer attempted a cross-examination. It was brief, ineffective. The evidence was too comprehensive. The timeline too clear. The paper trail too long. Dr. Nina Prescott testified. She described Colleen's request. If something goes wrong, make sure my mother gets the babies. She described it simply, without embellishment. The words were powerful enough on their own. Jolene testified about Colleen's state of mind. The phone calls that became less frequent. The laughter that disappeared. The woman who stopped coming to book club. The friend she should have fought harder to reach. The Guardian ad litem presented her report. She had spent 4 weeks interviewing everyone involved, visiting both homes, observing the babies with Dorothy, observing the babies with Grant. Her recommendation was clear. The children's best interests are served by placement with their maternal grandmother, Dorothy Brennan. Mrs. Brennan has demonstrated consistent, loving care. Mr. Ashford has demonstrated a pattern of deception, financial misconduct, and priorities that do not center the children's welfare. The judge took 2 hours to deliberate, 2 hours during which Dorothy sat in the hallway on a wooden bench and stared at the wall and held her purse against her stomach and breathed. Fletch paced, back and forth, his boots on the tile floor, a metronome of anxiety. Jolene sat beside Dorothy. She held Dorothy's hand. She did not speak. She did not need to. 34 years of friendship with Colleen had taught Jolene something about the women in this family. They did not need words. They needed presence. The bailiff called them back in. Everyone stood. The judge entered. She sat. She arranged her papers. She put on her reading glasses. In the matter of custody of Margot, Bridget, and Theodore Ashford, the judge said, this court finds as follows. Dorothy's heart hammered. She could feel it in her wrists, in her neck, in the soles of her feet, against the courtroom floor. Full legal and physical custody is awarded to Dorothy Ann Brennan. Dorothy closed her eyes. She did not gasp. She did not cry. She simply closed her eyes and let the words land. The court further orders that Grant Ashford repay all funds misappropriated from the joint accounts and the deceased's inheritance. The forged life insurance claim is referred to the district attorney's office for investigation of potential fraud. Grant sat motionless. His new lawyer whispered something. Grant shook his head. Once, a small motion. The motion of a man who has run out of moves. Mr. Ashford's medical license is placed under review pending the outcome of the fraud investigation. Grandparent visitation by Laurel Ashford is denied. The judge looked up from her papers. She looked at Dorothy. Mrs. Brennan, your daughter left behind a remarkable record, not just of evidence, of love. This court recognizes the extraordinary measures Colleen Ashford took to protect her children. This court is honored to fulfill her wishes. Dorothy opened her eyes. She looked at the judge. She nodded. Once. Thank you, Your Honor, she said. Her voice did not crack this time. Outside the courtroom, Emmett handed Dorothy a second envelope. This one was different from the first. Smaller, white, sealed with tape. Colleen's handwriting on the front. For Mom, after. She gave me this 3 weeks before delivery, Emmett said, with instructions to deliver it only after custody was resolved. She said you would need it then, not before. Dorothy held the envelope. She felt its weight. Light, just a few pages, but the weight of it was immeasurable. She did not open it in the courthouse. She did not open it in the car. She drove to the cemetery. She sat on the bench near Colleen's headstone. The afternoon sun was warm, early spring, daffodils pushing through the soil near the fence. Colleen had loved daffodils. She said they were proof that things could survive the cold. Dorothy opened the envelope. Dear Mom, if you are reading this, it means 2 things happened. The babies are safe, and you fought for them. I know I should have told you sooner about Grant, about the affair, about the money, about the IVF. I was ashamed, not of using a donor, of staying with a man who made me feel like using a donor was something to hide. These babies are mine, every cell, every heartbeat, every kick at 3 in the morning. I chose them. I grew them. I talked to them every night. I told them about you, Mom. I told them you make the best apple pie in the world, and that you cry at commercials, and that you will love them like you loved me, fiercely and without condition. I am not afraid of dying. I am afraid of them growing up in Grant's shadow. That is why I built this paper trail. That is why I talked to Emmett. That is why I changed my will. You are going to be tired, Mom. 3 babies at 61. But I have seen you. I have seen what you are made of. You raised me and Fletch alone after Dad died. You worked 2 jobs and never missed a school play. You are the strongest person I have ever known. Tell them about me, not the sad parts. Tell them I loved gardening and bad reality TV, and that I could never parallel park. Tell them I wanted them every single day. I wanted them. I love you, Mom. Now go be their grandmother and their mother and their whole world. Your Collie. Dorothy folded the letter carefully along the existing creases. Her daughter had folded it into perfect thirds. The paralegal in her, precise to the end, even in love, even in goodbye. She put the letter in her purse, next to the first letter, next to her wallet, next to the small notebook. She would carry it every day for the rest of her life. Not because she needed to remember, because it was the closest she could get to holding her daughter's hand. She stood. She washed her face in the cemetery's drinking fountain. She dried it with her sleeve. She looked at her reflection in the water. Green eyes. Colleen's eyes. She walked back to Colleen's headstone. She stood there for a moment. The wind moved through the trees. A bird sang somewhere nearby. A cardinal, red against the gray branches. You saved them, Collie, Dorothy said. From your grave, you saved your own children. She touched the top of the headstone, warm from the sun. She let her hand rest there. Then she walked to her car. Fletch was waiting. Jolene was waiting. The triplets were in the car with the new nanny, a woman named Helen, 53 years old, recommended by Emmett's wife. Warm hands, soft voice. Margot had fallen asleep on Helen's shoulder within 5 minutes of meeting her. Dorothy got in the car. She buckled her seatbelt. She looked in the rear view mirror. 3 car seats, 3 babies, 3 faces. Margot was awake, eyes open, green eyes, looking at Dorothy. Dorothy smiled, for the first time in months, a real smile. Not brave, not performed, real. She started the engine. She pulled out of the cemetery parking lot. The daffodils were blooming along the fence, yellow against green. Stubborn and bright and absolutely alive. 6 months later, the house on Birchwood Lane looked different. Not dramatically, not in the way a renovation changes a space, in the way seasons change a garden. Gradually, naturally, the same bones, the same structure, but new growth everywhere. Dorothy had repainted the master bedroom, soft yellow, Colleen's favorite color, the color of daffodils and lemon curd and the sunrise that came through the nursery window every morning at 6:15. She kept the furniture, the bed frame Colleen had chosen, the nightstands, the reading lamp, but the walls were new, fresh, the color of beginning again. She had put Colleen's photographs back, every single one, the hallway, the mantel, the side tables, the kitchen. She added new ones too. The triplets at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, a timeline growing alongside them. Bridget's first smile, Margot's first tooth, Teddy reaching for a spoon with the determination of a man conquering a mountain. Colleen's garden had come back to life. Dorothy watered it every evening. She did not know much about gardening. Colleen had been the one with the green thumb, but she learned. She read Colleen's gardening journal, another notebook filled with her daughter's careful handwriting, this one about soil composition and sunlight hours, and which tomatoes grew best in their zone. The rosemary survived the winter. Dorothy took this as a sign. Grant pleaded guilty to insurance fraud in a plea deal arranged by his third lawyer. He received 3 years of probation, a substantial fine, a permanent mark on his medical record. His surgical practice closed. The partners voted him out. The hospital revoked his privileges. His name, once printed on glossy brochures and medical conference programs, now appeared only in court documents and local news archives. Laurel Ashford stopped speaking to him, not because she felt compassion for Colleen, not because she was sorry, because the scandal embarrassed the family name. Laurel cared about reputation the way other people cared about breathing. It was involuntary, essential, non-negotiable, and her son had made the Ashford name into a cautionary tale. Vivienne disappeared. She sold the condo Grant had bought with Colleen's money. The proceeds were returned to the estate as part of the financial settlement. She moved to another state, a fresh start, or at least an attempt at one. She sent Dorothy one text message, 3 months after the verdict. "I am sorry. I know that does not mean much." Dorothy read it. She did not reply, but she did not delete it either. She let it sit in her phone, a small digital artifact, a reminder that people are complicated, that guilt takes different forms, that the woman who helped destroy her daughter's marriage was also the woman who helped save her daughter's children. Dr. Nina Prescott became a regular visitor. She came by every 2 weeks. She brought developmental milestone charts and homemade chicken soup. She checked the baby's reflexes and measured their growth and asked Dorothy questions about sleep schedules and feeding patterns. But she also stayed for coffee. She sat at the kitchen table and talked to Dorothy about things that had nothing to do with medicine, about the weather, about television shows, about a book she was reading, about her own mother, who had died 3 years ago and who she still missed every single day. They became friends, an unlikely pair, a 61-year-old grandmother and a 40-year-old obstetrician, bound by a woman they had both failed to save, bound by a promise they were both keeping. Jolene came every Sunday, without fail. She arrived at 9 in the morning with bagels from the bakery on Highland Avenue, the same bakery where she and Colleen used to get coffee every Saturday. She brought cream cheese, 3 kinds, plain for Dorothy, everything for Fletch. Strawberry, because Colleen always ordered strawberry. After bagels, Jolene read to the triplets, picture books, board books. She did different voices for every character. The bear voice was low and grumbly. The mouse voice was high and quick. The narrator voice was calm and warm. Teddy laughed every time. The same bright, startled sound he had made in the park, like joy catching itself by surprise, over and over every Sunday. "Your mother would have done this better," Jolene told the babies once. She was holding Bridget on her lap. Bridget was chewing the corner of a board book. She did the best bear voice. She could make it sound like the bear was actually in the room. "I can't do that, but I'm going to keep trying." Fletch built a treehouse in the backyard. It took him 3 weekends. He drove down from Portland each Friday night and worked from dawn to dusk. He used cedar planks and stainless steel bolts in a level that had belonged to his father. He painted it green, Colleen's second favorite color, after yellow. The treehouse was not for the babies. They were 6 months old. They could barely hold up their own heads. The treehouse was for later, for when they were 5 and 7 and 10, for when they needed a place to climb and dream and whisper secrets, for when they needed to be above the ground, closer to the sky, closer to wherever their mother was. He put a small plaque on the door, hand-carved, cedar, 2 words, "The Collie House." He showed it to Dorothy on a Sunday afternoon. She stood in the backyard and looked up at it, the green paint bright against the oak tree's branches, the plaque catching the sunlight. She would have loved it, Dorothy said. She would have said the paint was uneven, Fletch replied. Dorothy laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from the belly, the kind she thought she might never produce again. But there it was, unexpected and warm, and proof that joy survives even the deepest grief. In the evenings, after the babies were asleep and the house was quiet, Dorothy sat in the nursery. She had moved the rocking chair to the center of the room, between the 3 cribs. so she could reach all of them. Margot on the left, Bridget in the middle, Teddy on the right. The rocking chair was the one Colleen had bought at a yard sale. She had refinished it herself, sanded the old paint, applied 3 coats of white stain, sealed it with polyurethane. It still smelled faintly of lemon oil. The lemon oil Colleen used for all her furniture projects. $1.50 a bottle from the hardware store. Dorothy rocked. The chair creaked softly. A rhythm. A pulse. The sound of something old and reliable, doing what it was made to do. She looked at the 3 cribs. 3 mobiles spinning slowly overhead. Stars and moons and clouds. 3 nightlights. Plugged into the walls, shaped like stars, casting soft yellow light across the ceiling. Colleen had ordered them online. They arrived 2 days after the funeral. Dorothy plugged them in herself. Margot slept on her stomach, always, despite every recommendation to the contrary. She would flip herself over within minutes of being placed on her back, stubborn, determined. Dorothy recognized the trait immediately. It was Colleen's, pure Colleen. Bridget slept on her back, perfectly still, arms at her sides, like a small soldier at rest. Her eyes moved behind her lids, dreaming already, at 6 months old. Dorothy wondered what babies dreamed about. Warmth, probably. Milk, the sound of a heartbeat. Teddy slept on his side, curled, his fist pressed against his mouth. He was the quietest of the 3, the most patient. He waited for his bottle. He waited for his turn to be held. He waited for Margot to stop babbling and Bridget to stop fussing, and then he made his small sound. Not a cry, not a demand, a notification. I am here. I am ready, whenever you can. Dorothy rocked and watched them breathe. 3 small chests rising and falling, 3 small lives, each one a miracle of science and stubbornness, and a woman's refusal to accept that she could not have the family she wanted. People would tell this story as a tragedy. She knew that. A young mother who died, a cheating husband, a courtroom fight, a scandal, an obituary too short for a life too brief. But that was not the story. The story was a woman who loved her children so much that she built them a life raft before the ship even sank, who gathered evidence and organized files and changed her will and wrote letters and made plans, who prepared for the worst while painting name plaques and folding baby blankets and singing lullabies to a belly that held 3 beating hearts. The story was a mother who fought her last battle in silence and won it from beyond the grave. Dorothy stood from the rocking chair. She moved to the window. The backyard was dark. The treehouse was a shadow against the oak tree. The garden was sleeping. The porch light cast a small circle of gold on the steps. She picked up the purple marker from the windowsill. She had found it in Colleen's desk drawer. The same marker Colleen used to draw hearts on the ultrasound photo. The same shade of purple, dark, rich, the color of intention. Dorothy uncapped the marker. She drew a small heart on the wall beside Margot's crib, then another beside Bridget's, then another beside Teddy's. 3 hearts, small, imperfect. A grandmother's hand was not as steady as a mother's, but they were there, permanent, purple against soft yellow walls. She capped the marker. She put it back on the windowsill. She would leave it there, for later, for when the babies were old enough to hold it themselves, for when they were old enough to draw their own hearts. She looked at the clock, 11:45, almost midnight, almost a new day. She should sleep. She should rest. She had 3 6-month-olds who would wake her at 5:30, demanding bottles and attention and the full force of her love. She would give it to them, all of it. Every morning, every night, every bottle, every diaper, Every bath, every lullaby, every scraped knee and first step and bad dream. She would give them everything because that was what Colleen had asked, and because that was what Dorothy did, what she had always done, what she would always do. She began to hum, softly, the lullaby she had sung to Colleen, the one her own mother had sung to her, the one Colleen had sung to her belly for 9 months. A melody passed down through 3 generations of women. No words, just sound, just the hum of love moving through time. The baby slept, the night lights glowed, the house was quiet. Outside, the first stars appeared above the treehouse with its cedar plaque and its green paint and its promise of climbing and dreaming and laughter that had not happened yet, but would. Someday, soon or later. She had 3 of everything now, 3 mouths to feed, 3 futures to build, 3 hearts that beat because Colleen's had stopped, and Dorothy Brennan, 61 years old, exhausted and silver-haired, and fiercely, completely, stubbornly alive. She would not trade a single one. Not for anything in this world. Not for anything in the next. This story carries one truth that no one can take from you. Love does not end when the heart stops beating. A mother's love builds walls that outlast her. It writes letters that speak after she is gone. It protects children she will never hold again. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, then do one small thing. Hit that like button. Leave a comment and tell us which moment hit you the hardest. Share this with a woman who needs to hear that her strength matters. And if you have not yet subscribed, tap that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss a story like this again. We are here because of you. Every like, every comment, every share. It tells us to keep going, to keep telling these stories, stories that matter, stories that stay with you long after the last word. Thank you for staying until the end. You are the reason we do this. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience. All characters and events are fictional and created for entertainment and inspirational purposes.